Welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming. Many friends, students, colleagues. I appreciate all of you coming out to this exciting event with someone who's become a friend of mine, but who's also been one of my favorite songwriters, Joe Pug. So we are going to have a concert that will also be followed by a conversation on art and spiritual seeking and finding and meaning seeking, all those great things. I have some students from my Search for Meaning course, but also my Origins of the Contemporary West. I should say, for those of you who are here, partly for the extra credit, but also for the music, make sure you sign in with the QR code. But I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your evening to be part of this. So we will have, the concert will go for about 45 minutes. Then me and Joe are going to have a conversation for a bit, and then we're going to open it up for a general conversation with everyone here, anyone who wants to ask questions of Joe, or maybe you just want to opine about music or the spiritual life or the search for meaning. It's your chance. It's your chance to have a go at it. So I want to now introduce Joe Pug. Joe hails from Prince George County, Maryland, and has toured with Steve Earle, Sturgill Simpson, Jason Isbell, The Killers, Lucinda Williams, and many more. He has released 7 full-length albums, 2 EPs, and 2 live albums. So please join me in welcoming Joe Pug to the stage.
It's a pleasure to be in Florida. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. But then it snowed. It was an ice storm in Maryland, where I'm from. It's about 4 degrees outside when I left yesterday. 4 degrees, not even the good snow, everything had iced over already. The kids are off school for the foreseeable future. And I was able to just turn to my wife and say, okay, I gotta go to Florida, babe. Thank you, David, and thank you guys for coming out on a Wednesday night. I appreciate it. That my enemies are slow, that my fevers are weak, that my lessons don't hurt, that my medicine is sweet, that these days are not the pearls, and I'm not the swine, that faithful's not a word, that I cannot define, that I find my will to fight, that I lose my taste for drink, and if there's too much to ask, that my handlers are brief, that while we're here on earth, I can keep the difference here between what I should have done and what I really did. If my children live out stories they can turn around the fire, they can recognize beauty, they can recognize a lie. Yet their innocence remains, that they never question my love, that they work to build cathedrals they won't live to pray inside of, that our better angels sing peace instead of war, the pistols close at hand when the wolf is at the door, that the plot never thickens, the shoe never drops, that the age of grace begins when the age of reason stops. My father calls me home, like I'm racing under street lights, like the dinner on the stove, that there's a candle in my window, that there's roses on my grave, and those that I befriended, and those that I betrayed, that the 3 men I admire the most never caught that last train for the coast, that the music never died, that the levee wasn't dry. We might be east to Eden, but we're heading west tonight. here in Baltimore, my friend. Dawn, I am the darkness coming on. And I'm once, I'm twice, I am the whole, I'm just a slice. Some call me gone, some call me here. None are wrong, none are neither. I am right now, I am back then, I will return, don't ask me when. Disappointed kiss, I am the unexpected harvest. I am the old Kentucky home, I am the son who runs the farthest. I have done wrong, I will do wrong, there's nothing wrong with doing wrong. And I am faith, I am belief, except for when I'm not. I am the teeth of champions, I am rust and water rock. Breathing, I'm the missing of the passing season. I am the brush, I am the strokes, I'm sickness come to the best of folks. I am renewed, I am just made, I am unchanging. I'm past your fence to by the edge, I am Dakota thunder raging. And by my shoes and by my feet and by my soul and wonder, I am the tracks we played above, I am the tunnel running under. It's 5 after midnight, and the sun is still setting. All girls in white dresses, not meant for weddings. And there stands your daughter, with both eyes upon you. You stand up and walk to her side. There's no place a good man can hide. There's no place a good man can hide. History is perfect and written by the winners. They told you to reach for the sky. There's no place a good man can hide. There's no place a good man can hide. Joke on the paper's front pages this 4th of July. There's no place a good man can hide. 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 Coming out to the old folk music show in the year 2026. That makes you profoundly strange people. Or people here for extra credit, which would be completely rational. It's strange to come to a folk show in the year 2026. Stranger still is playing the old folk show for a living in the year 2026. It's a strange gig to have. And I think the reason that I do this, you have to understand, it was because I was how I was brought up. I was raised by a hippie. My dad was and still very much is a hippie. Was anyone else here raised by hippies? No, kind of a low percentage. When I asked that question in like Portland, Oregon, the whole room stands to attention. Well, if you didn't have the experience yourself, I'll tell you that I had a wonderful childhood. It was good being raised by a hippie. I was very close to my dad. I'm close to him still. The only drawback about being raised by a hippie is it's very difficult to figure out how to rebel. And maybe that's why I'm up here dressed like an ATF agent right now. You got to get it where you can find it. So I wrote a song about this years and years ago, trying to solve this paradox for myself, trying to square this circle. And this song is called I Do My Father's Drugs. When the party starts on Monday and Christmas starts in June, when no one minds, I just arrived and I'll be leaving soon. If I return with eyes half open, don't ask me where I was. I do my father's drugs. When every revolution is sponsored by the state, there's no bravery in bayonets in tearing down the gates. If you see me with a rifle, don't ask me what it's for. I fight my father's wars. When hunger strikes a fashion and freedom is routine, when all the streets in Cleveland are named for Martin Luther King, you will see me at the protest, but you'll notice that I drink. I burn my father's flag. Annapolis, Maryland, which is about as close as I get to doing a hometown show. So my whole family was there, lots of friends and neighbors, and my dad was there. And he came to the dressing room before the show, and he goes, "In 15 years, I've never asked you for something like this." I was like, "I don't like the way this is starting right here." And he's like, "There's a song I don't want you to play tonight." And I was like, "What song is that?" And it was that song right there. I said, "Why not?" And he said, "I don't want the grandkids to think I'm a drug addict." I was like, "You sound kind of paranoid." He was like, I am. I was like, "Are you high right now?" I played the song anyway. I was born into a circus, but I ran off to join a home. Oh, they said that I was worthless, that my family died unknown. So it gets and so it goes, that's what you get, I suppose. Wanting something more than a life of hope and rose. All the Christians left behind at the crossroads of your town. Oh, they're playing truth or dare 'neath the sanctuary now. Some wish they had the truth, some wish they had to go, but there ain't no sense in leaving from the only thing you know. How good you are, how hard it is, how good you are. There's a butler in your heart. He is troublesome and old. He repeats the word of life to describe your family gold. You ask him please to go, but there's one thing you don't know. He carved April 7th, 65 into the side of your piano. Oh, I know how good you are, how hard it is, how good you are. Everything that you were meant for, everything that you were born to do, does not need you to do it. Someone else was born to do it too. You're like a half-grown man, you barely learn how to stand. If you shut up with what you've chosen, you'll hear something choosing you. How good you are, how hard it is, how good you are. From deep dark well, she's trying to scare me in the ice will melt as the day gets hot, the night grows old, as the sun climbs into the sky. When now is then, and tomorrow's come, where you've been starts meaning some. As long as you can, just keep stumbling. As long as you're not finished, you can start over again. As long as you're not finished, you can start over again. You can start over again. From deep dark well comes gurgling ice will melt as the day gets hot, the night grows old, as the sun climbs into the sky. As long as you're not finished, you can start over again. As long as you're not finished, you can start. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to play you guys a song now I wrote for my wife, actually. But it's not a love song, as you're soon to hear. It's maybe it's a tough love song. I don't know. I wrote it in the midst of the two of us having a huge disagreement, blowout fight that we could not come together on. We couldn't make amends. We couldn't compromise in any way because I was absolutely right. And but I was doing a terrible job in conversation of describing why, and she was doing a pretty good job on her end. So I thought on my feet, and I said, okay, so I extricated myself from that fight. I lost the battle so that I might win the war. And I brainstormed to myself, I'm like, how am I going to communicate my point to my wife, because I'm doing a horrible job in conversation. And then I thought, bingo, for the last 15 years, for a living, I've communicated via the medium of song. So maybe if I put my point in song form, it'll get across to her. So I sat down, I worked very hard on this, and this song is my attempt to describe to my wife how I view the nature of our domestic reality. And this song is called I Don't Work in a Bank. I don't work in a bank, they're not my beans to count. If you want proof when I go broke, no one will bail me out. No one asks me where I'm going, don't ask how much I drank. If you want answers, that's just fine, but I don't work in a bank. Oh, well, I don't work in a bank, and you knew that when we met. So put that dress back on the rack and live with your regret. You don't get to taste the top shelf when your bottom line is blank. So it's private stock, public school. I don't work in a bank. Oh, I don't work in a bank. That was fine when I was a kid, but the awful truth I've learned, things be much better if I did. Yeah, I ended up with short change, just myself to thank. Cause the world's a giant spinning coin, and I don't work in a bank. feels about that song. And I haven't played it for her yet, but I tell you this. I think maybe Monday, when I get home, after she's been alone with her 3 children under the age of 9 for a week, while I've been in Florida doing my art, that'll be the time to lay it on. With a necklace and a feeling that you can admit. He drives a dark car, no heart, rebel with a gold car. Out here waiting on the crescent bridge. She's a true right side, parments and brown eyes. Out here waiting on the crescent bridge. You can redirect the river, you can catch the rain. You can build yourself a palace on the fruited plain. And I know you can touch the moon, but your stomach's always empty with a silver spoon. He drives a dark car, no hot rhythm with a gold car. Out here waiting on the crescent bridge. She's a true right side, parments and brown eyes. Out here waiting on the crescent bridge. Out here waiting. Out here waiting. I want to play you guys a song I did not write, because after all, this is a folk music show, and that's what it's all about. I'm going to write for you a song by a fellow who's no longer here with us. I'm going to play a song by John Prine. I had a feeling if you were at the old folk music show in the year 2026, you'd have a passing familiarity, at least with John Prine. I love John Prine. You love John Prine. We all love John Prine. I think I hold the distinction, though, as the person who never met John Prine, who came the closest on the most occasions, because I stalked him for years, basically. And I had many, many near misses, but the closest I ever got was the first time. I was 24 years old. I was living in Chicago, building houses, and I made like a little, basically a demo. And at that time, there wasn't even SoundCloud or anything. We had those like writable silver, put your name in Sharpie on them, CDRs. And I got that, and I passed some around what I thought was the music business at the time, and I sat back and waited for my record deal. And nobody called me, save one label. And that label was a label out of Nashville, Tennessee called Oh Boy Records, and that was John Prine's record label. It still posthumously is, it's still going on today. And they said, hey, we think this is pretty good. Why don't you come down to Nashville and we'll have a cup of coffee? I said, great. So I go down to Nashville, I get into the office, and I'm not met by John Prine there. In the office, I am met by John Prine's longtime manager, a character to end all characters, a man named Al Bonetta. And Al Bonetta was like this New Jersey Italian guy who managed folk singers in Nashville, Tennessee, for some reason. He told me, he goes, Joe, I didn't get into the music business, I got into the entertainment business. His client before John Prine was a roller skating chimpanzee, which is a verifiable fact. You can Google that after the show, Al Bonetta, chimpanzee. He said, I heard John Prine play Sam Stone, and I fired the chimp the next day. Someone said that to me in my lifetime. It's a sentence that I heard. So anyway, what you have to understand about Al, for this story to make any sense, is Al had become fabulously wealthy by owning the intellectual property of songwriters. And in music, for some reason, and I don't know why, intellectual property is called publishing. So Al owned the publishing of a lot of songwriters, one of whom was a slightly more obscure folk singer, a guy named Stevie Goodman. And Stevie Goodman is best known, he wrote that song, City of New Orleans, that Arlo Guthrie took to the top of the charts. But that was not Stevie Goodman's most lucrative song in his catalog, because Stevie Goodman had written the theme song to the Chicago Cubs, Go Cubs Go. He wrote that song, and every time the Cubs won a game, which is admittedly not a lot of times, but every time they won a game, they would play that song over the radio, and your royalties are based on how many people are listening to the song. So already you're starting to get an idea of the scope of how valuable this song was. But it goes a step further, because the Cubs were broadcast on a station called WGN, which had been grandfathered into this insanely large broadcast license. I mean, you will meet Cubs fans in Nebraska, in the Dakotas, certainly in Iowa. So you're starting to get an idea of how lucrative this song is. So I go into all this side quest here, because when I'm in the office with Al Bonetta, 24 years old, he gets a phone call and he picks it up. And on the line for him are two parties, the Chicago Cubs and Bud Light. And Bud Light simply wants to put up a billboard facing into Wrigley Field that just says, Go Cubs Go. But to do it, they have to come through Al. They're asking him for a price. And he goes, okay, hold on. And he mutes it, and he looks up at me, and he goes, how much should I charge him, Joe? I said, Al, I'm making $15 an hour as a carpenter right now. I don't think I'm the right guy. He goes, okay, that's fine. And he takes him off mute, and he's about to give him a number, but as he's giving him the number, it really felt to me as if he was looking me up and down and kind of assessing me. And he goes, you can have your billboard for 25 grand. So they like that number. They said, that's great. We'll send the check and the contract. Thank you very much. I leave Al's office. I go back to Chicago. I'm building houses again. And I got faxed over to me. That's how old I am. I got faxed a deal memo of a contract, and the terms of the contract were as such. All of my publishing in perpetuity throughout the universe for the rest of my life for $25,000. So I said no. But I would hear that years later, Al Bonetta died before John Prine did, and I would hear years later that when Al Bonetta died, John Prine went around and gave everybody their publishing back for free. So there's a lesson in there, students. I should have taken the 25 grand. That's the. Anyway, it wouldn't be a folk show without someone else's song, and this is the song that made Al Bonetta fire the chimpanzee. Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in conflict overseas. And the time that he served had shattered all his nerves and left a bitter shrapnel in his knee. But the morphine eased the pain, and the grass grew around his brain and gave him all the confidence he lacked. With a purple heart and a monkey on his back, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't stop, count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sandstones, welcome home, didn't last too long. He went to work after he'd made his last dime. And Sammy took to stealing when he got that empty feeling for $100 hat on overtime. And the gold ran through his veins like 1,000 railroad trains, and eased his mind in the hours that he chose. While the kids ran around wearing other people's clothes. There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't stop, count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sam Stone was alone when he popped his last balloon, climbing walls while sitting in his chair. When they played his last request, while the room smelled just like that, with an overdose hovering in the air. Our life had lost its fun, there was nothing to be done except trade in the house that he bought on the GI Bill for a flag draped casket on a local hero's hill. There's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't stop, count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. I want to leave enough time for Q&A with David and I. I'm going to give you one more song here. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a beautiful auditorium. I've never been on your campus before. An absolutely beautiful campus. And thank you for hosting me here tonight. I appreciate it. And I've come to know the wish list of my father. I've come to know the shipwrecks where he wished. I've come to wish aloud among the overdressed crowd. Come to witness now the sinking of the ship, throwing pennies from the sea-top next to it. And I've come to roam the forest past the village with a dozen lazy horses in my cart. I've come here to get high, to do more than just get by. I've come to test the timber of my heart. Oh, I've come to test the timber of my heart. I have come to be untroubled in my seeking. I have come to see that nothing is for nothing. time to reach forward and behind. Oh, the more I seek, the more I'm sought. Yeah, the more I seek, the more I'm sought. And I've come to meet the sheriff and his posse, offer him the broadside of my jaw. I've come here to get broke. Your name may be bum or smoke. We'll go drinking 2 towns over after all. We'll go drinking 2 towns over after all. And I've come to meet the legendary takers. I've only come to ask them for a light. They say I've come with less than I should rightfully possess. I say the more I buy, the more I'm bought. And the more I'm bought, the less I cost. Now I have come to take their servants and their surplus. I have come to take their raincoats and their speed. I've come to give my field to ransack and spill. I've come to trade the harvest for the seed. Oh, I've come to trade the harvest for the seed. And I've come to know the manger that you sleep. I have come to be the stranger that you keep. I've come from down the road, and my footsteps never slowed. Before we met, I knew we'd meet. Ah, before we met, I knew we'd meet. Now I've come here to ignore your cries and heartaches. I've come to closely listen to you sing. I've come here to insist that I leave here with a kiss. I've come to say exactly what I mean. And I mean so many things. And you've come to know me stubborn as a butcher. And you've come to know me thankless as a guest. Will you recognize my face when God's awful grace strips me of my jacket and my vest and reveals all the treasure in my chest?
This is the academic. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. All right, well, thanks again to Joe for coming out down to Florida and joining us and being willing to also have a conversation on art and spiritual seeking. And thanks again to everyone for coming out to this event. So I thought I should just explain a little bit more of the background to this event. So I have this Templeton grant on spiritual yearning. It's part of Templeton's Spiritual Yearning Research Initiative, and they've helped to fund this along with the Hamilton School, and we're very grateful for that. But the grant is really focused on sort of spiritual yearning or the search for meaning among a growing amount of the population that is non-religious. And there's been in sociology a phenomenon known as the rise of the nuns, which is N-O-N-E-S, those who say none on surveys when they're asked about religion, their religious affiliation. And so that started being tracked around 1948. and it was at about 1 to 2% for about 10 years, 10, 15 years, and started in the late 60s, started to go up to 6 to 9%. And in the 2000s, it started to go up more towards where it's at now, about 25 to 30%. And so I've been I've had a sort of this grant. We've had project teams sort of thinking about spiritual yearning in an age of secularization, how people yearn for meaning or seek meaning in life, in an age in which people have many different perspectives on what makes a meaningful life. Some continue to be religious. Obviously, if it's 25 to 30% of the population in the U.S. that's not religious, then that means there's, do the math, 75 to 70% of the population that remains religious. But nevertheless, I've always been drawn to Joe's music because I think, especially early on, I think I think we'll get more into kind of your own personal story on this front. But he has these songs like the last one we heard, Hymn 101, which are in many ways songs of spiritual seeking from someone who is not coming from a religious perspective, at least at that time. So about 2 years ago, my friend Max and I, a colleague of mine, we went to Joe's show in Gainesville here. It was the Heartwood Soundstage. And I was talking to Joe afterwards, and I said, I've really appreciated your music over the years. And we're a similar age. We're now into our 40s, and so I feel like we've gone through a lot of similar life stages and so forth. And so it's been a good accompaniment in my life. And so he said, what brought you down to Florida? Because I had seen him in Chicago and Milwaukee and so forth. He said, I'm now teaching philosophy at the University of Florida. And he says, that's great. I'm reading a book by Peter Kreeft. I was like, you're reading a book by Peter Kreeft. So Peter Kreeft is a Catholic philosopher. I myself am a Catholic convert, and I find out Joe also has became a Catholic convert in the last 5 years. And so I was like, I'll send you a copy of one of my books. And Joe said, why don't I just come by in the morning? And on my way out of town, he had another gig in Florida. And so, okay, that sounds great. And so anyways, in the morning, my wife asked me, how was the Joe Pug concert last night? I said, it was great. By the way, it's coming over in an hour. She was a little surprised by that. But so anyways, it's been wonderful. Joe and I think, have struck up a friendship, and I think a real sense of a kindred spirit. And so just very grateful for your music and for the friendship that's developed over this time.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel the same.
So I thought we'd begin maybe with a little bit about your story. So I'm going to try to talk maybe for 25 minutes, and we'll kind of then open it up. We'll see how it goes. If I run out of things to say, we'll just kick it to the rest of the group here. But I thought maybe I might have you sort of give something of your story of how you got into music. So you have a sort of story that starts. You were at UNC. That's okay. We're all right with that. You were.
Are you really?
I keep trying to tell myself that. But so you wanted to be a playwright coming into your senior year, and you have a kind of life crisis. You want to talk about
I was studying. I was studying dramatic art at UNC Chapel Hill, and about my junior year, I was very unhappy. It had nothing to do with the school. It was a fine enough school. I was really nervous about joining the world, as it were, and I felt like I wasn't, in college, I was kind of being protected by it. So the night before my senior year of college, I knew I was going to move to Chicago directly after that year, and I had what I'd later kind of think to be spiritual epiphany, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I just had kind of a voice inside me telling me, just go to Chicago right now. And so I did. I got my little Ford Ranger, and I bought a little rubber map from a Citgo station or whatever it was, and I drove to Chicago that night. I called the registrar's office at UNC the next morning, and I dropped out, and I sent my parents, God bless them, I sent them a letter that said, Mom and Dad, I have decided to drop out of college and move to Chicago. I will call you when I'm ready. Please don't try to contact me. Which I now have children that are like 9, 7, and 4 years old. And if any of them ever tried to do that at the age of 21, I would go full Liam Neeson and find them and not let them do that. But my parents let me do it. And so I just went to work there in Chicago. My dad was a carpenter, so I knew something about the trade. So I went to work on job sites, and at night I started playing guitar. I didn't know how to get into theater. theater, you need a theater itself, you need a company, you need a script that you're paying royalties on, you need all this stuff. With music, I could just do it by myself at open mics. So I started playing at open mics in Chicago, and then, you know, club owners started asking me to come and headline shows there, and then eventually my break, where I got to kind of quit my job, and not everyone gets this. I know a lot of excellent, just stunning musicians who never get a lucky break. But I got a lucky break in that an older kind of outlaw country musician named Steve Earle heard my demo tape, and he asked me to go on tour with him in the United States and in Europe for 2 months. And I did. I quit my job, thinking that I'd probably have to go back to it, and that was 17 years ago now. And so that's how I kind of got into music.
Yeah, no, that's great. So there is this sort of theme of, I think, in your music of like feeling called to something, or maybe chasing a dream, that in some ways also expressed itself in these songs that express at the same time spiritual yearning. So, for instance, this song, Hymn 101. So you have 3 hymn songs. We had a conversation earlier today with some students about some of this, but how is it that you came to write these songs, someone might ask? You, as at that time, someone who was agnostic, wasn't raised religious at all. I mean, if I might just read, one of the lines from Hymn 101, you say, this is sort of, I think, the first refrain. You say, "I have come to be untroubled in my seeking. I have come to see that nothing is for naught. I have come to reach out blind, to reach forward and behind, for the more I seek, the more I'm sought. The more I seek, the more I'm sought." How would you describe sort of, we were talking earlier today about maybe perhaps this experience of being under the muse. Obviously the term music itself comes from this notion of being under the muse. And Tom Petty, he was given an award. I should have looked up where this particular award was. He said when he's given this award, he kind of felt unworthy of it because he says, "I am simply a receiver." Right? There's sort of the sense of the artist as a receiver of a kind of inspiration. So I wonder if you might sort of speak to the kind of maybe inspiration or how that came about, maybe particularly focusing on that song, Hymn 101, which I think has been a song that, I think there's like one song that sort of defines Joe Pug. It's Hymn 101. And so, I wonder if you might speak a little bit to sort of the creative process and how you ended up writing that song.
Well, I think it's appropriate to invoke Tom Petty. He's from Tallahassee, right?
No.
And
Gainesville.
I'm messing with you, man. I'm messing with you.
I'm taking Joe on a Tom Petty tour tomorrow. We're going to go see all the Tom Petty sites.
That particular song, Hymn 101, I spent a lot of time in my 20s. I just go to coffee shops and I just write and write and write and write. Oh, that's back when I could smoke cigarettes. It was the best. R.I.P. me being able to smoke cigarettes. But I would go and I would just spend a lot of time, and it would take me hours and hours and hours to finish songs at first. But the best songs always came out faster, obviously. And that song, Hymn 101, came out the fastest. That song, which has the most words of any song I've written, which someone would tell me later is actually in some sort of iambic pentameter. I wrote that song in about 15 minutes. And I just knew at that time that something had come through me, and I don't know how. I've been trying desperately to recreate that, because Hymn 101 did become, that's the song that Steve Earle heard and took me on the road. That's the song through which most people find my music. It gave me, well, as far as I'm concerned with my little operation, it gave me the keys to the world. And but it just came through me. And again, I've been trying. I'm like, all right, well, if I could do it with this one, imagine if I had 10 songs like this. Then I could finally, own 15 regional Taco Bells or something like that and really take off. But I haven't been able to. There are moments when I can kind of get back into that kind of flow state or that muse state, but I haven't been able to get back there the same way I was with that one.
Yeah. So is there, like, do you try to go back and interpret it after the fact? Like, was there something I was reaching out for in that moment? So I think music, art generally, but music does have this capacity maybe to try to reach for things that we struggle to say, to try to give word, to expression, some feeling, to some human longings. Do you see music as sort of playing that kind of, as like a vehicle for maybe your or something?
Yes, it definitely, as precise as language can be, music itself is obviously attempting to express the inexpressible, but it's the stuff I like the most, and I think stuff that most people like the most, is it's pre-intellectual. There's not any kind of intellectual decisions you're making with it, and the more intellectual I end up being on a song, the absolute worse it is every time. Trying to be clever is death to art. Yeah.
So I wonder, you were kind of talking about this journey into music. There's a sense you've come to interpret it as a call. So I should mention that Joe wrote a piece on the lost highway to Damascus, kind of telling about your own sort of religious conversion and the role of music within that. So this sort of early call, you sort of later interpreted to be sort of God's voice or something of the Spirit moving you might say. That then sort of plays. So there's this sort of spiritual seeking that occurs, but there's also a kind of maybe perhaps finding.
Yeah.
So has that shifted how you think about your art as you've sort of maybe become maybe more spiritually settled? Does that change the way that you write, that you sort of think about it, or is it just not that heady? I mean, you're sort of suggesting that.
Well, I think, so at that time when I was the age of any students that are in here tonight, I was really, if I was spiritual at all, it was kind of, this Joseph Campbell, hero with 1,000 faces, kind of hodgepodge that I thought made me really cool. And Christianity at that time to me was like, it just seemed to me so obvious. I'm saying this now as a Christian. It seemed humiliating for that to be my spiritual path. It's just honestly the way that I feel. I'm embarrassed about it now. But I thought this idea of the monomyth of like, well, really all world cultures are telling the same story, and it's all just one big story, and here I am, 24 years old, and I've really got it figured out because I read, one, Jungian book from like the 1960s, and I was very pleased with myself. And then as I got older and life got more real, and obviously the way that life becomes the realist is when you become a parent, that kind of Joseph Campbell monomyth became really weak tea to me, especially when I thought about what I was going to teach my son. It just didn't hold the weight that I needed it to hold. So I very, very reluctantly found myself in the back of my local Catholic church parish, promising myself that I would only extract morals from my children, but not listen to any of the heebie-jeebie stuff that the priest said. And I went to Mass every week for 3 or 4 years, and gradually, over time, and I don't know when, I just came to believe. I came to believe that Christ is who He said He was. And for any students who were maybe in a similar place that I was at that time, I cannot emphasize enough to you how strange I find this new path and unexpected. I never expected to be in front of anyone talking about Jesus. Like that was not on my bingo card, even remotely, in my early 20s, but here I am. So,
Yeah, one of the lyrics from your song that's really stuck with me, and I think sort of maybe suggests how our own sort of spiritual seeking is shaped by the world around us. So you played it tonight, How Good You Are, where the song starts out, I was born into a circus, but ran off to join a home. It's a kind of, if some of you know St. Augustine, it's sort of an Augustinian sentiment where he talks about the restless heart. And you know, I think it's a beautiful line that sort of communicates a sense of yeah, that the world can be a circus at times. That it's what I might call the sort of experience of a kind of spiritual alienation, a sense that we are estranged. We're seeking that place of spiritual fulfillment, right? And so we find ourselves on a spiritual journey. I mean, I think so. One of the characteristic things I think of living in what I might call a secular age, where there's not understood simply as anti-religious, but where there are a variety of viewpoints, and a religious perspective is one option among others. In fact, a very contested option. And I think in your account in The Lost Highway to Damascus, you talk about being a modern person. Like, a modern person just can't believe in these sort of things, right? But nevertheless, I think many people find themselves in this position of being a spiritual seeker in their lives. And I think music plays an important role in that, but of course, you know, there's other influences. And I think one thing that's interesting in your work is, and you mentioned being a father, but also, and you mentioned in your performance your own father. And so I find it interesting that you have this sort of the image of fatherhood, both of your own father, but then becoming a father, and what you hope for your children, and obviously that led in your own spiritual journey. And of course, in the Christian tradition, we have the idea of our Heavenly Father, right? So yeah, how do you think I mean, again, I'm asking you to intellectualize maybe something you don't want to intellectualize, but I wonder if you might speak to that theme of fatherhood. So one of my favorite novelists is Cormac McCarthy, and some of you may know No Country for Old Men, maybe you know it more from the Coen Brothers film. But there's this image at the end he has this dream of his father sort of like carrying this fire out in the dark, and there's, you know, this is a sort of potent image. Of course, Freud might say you're projecting, you know, this protective parental figure or whatever, but you know, there's something interesting. I mean, motherhood, we could also reflect on that, but yeah, I wonder if you might reflect a little bit on sort of how fatherhood comes up in your songs.
I think it's my own life experience. So many artists had terrible home lives, and particularly absent or terrible fathers. And what I remember growing up, I was really into Nirvana, and I loved Kurt Cobain. And I remember being 13 years old and being like, a huge part of his story is that his dad was horrible. My dad is great. What am I going to do? This is a big problem for me. And so my story is more unusual. I had a very happy home life. I think I'm leading a happy home life with my own nuclear family now, and that doesn't really fit. It simply doesn't fit the, at least the 20th century narrative of an artist. But what was I going to do? Fake it, you know? And so it comes up. I kind of leaned into it, and I do speak of fatherhood quite a bit. I remember telling my hippie dad, I had to like come out of the closet to him like 4 years ago and be like, Dad, I'm Catholic. So he handled it pretty well. His other deal, probably in between hits of a joint, he was like, let me ask you this. He was like, if I'm dying and you're there, you could technically baptize me right before I die, right? It's like, yeah, I think that's allowed, but like, let's not play it that way. If you're interested, let's have a conversation. But yeah, that was just being true to myself. I didn't have a broken home. I didn't have a complex because of that. I came from what I came from, and so writing about pain, psychic pain, was not something that I was going to be able to do, and so I ended up writing about something that is maybe a little bit more wholesome. It can come off as more twee, you know what I mean, and kind of cloying, and like, so that's a pitfall with it, but it was just my experience. I couldn't fake it otherwise.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, another theme I think in your music, perhaps you might reflect on, is sort of, on the one side, you have these sort of songs I think express a certain kind of individuality, self-sufficiency. I'm thinking, for instance, of Nobody's Man. You'd rather be nobody's man than somebody's child. The sense of, you know, in The Door Was Always Open, the sense of like taking initiative, asserting, right? Stepping through the door of possibility, right? It's kind of a sense in some of your early songs about that. You're stepping out into the great wide open, pursuing this dream, right? You're kind of making it, right? At the same time, and I think it's a theme that's maybe come up more in your music as you've gone on, maybe a sense of grace or dependency. I'm thinking, for instance, of your Flood and Color album, the sense of like, there are things that happen in your life, and sometimes those are hard things, but sometimes there are also kinds of graces. I think in your most recent album, you have a song, Then the Rain, where the rain is sort of a sort of image of grace. Obviously in the Hymn 101 song, there's that sense of not only do you seek, but you're also sought. So this is, I think, an interesting sort of theme in your music, and maybe one where it's sort of maybe tipped more in the direction of sort of acceptance of a kind of grace in one's life. Going back to the song "How Good You Are," you have this line: "If you shut up with what you're chosen, you'll hear something choosing you." Then the same album, you have the song "The Door Was Always Open," where it's like, rather than waiting on some God above to tell me I was chosen, I have the lyrics somewhere here, but then you stepped right through, the door was always open, right? I wonder if you might reflect on sort of that tension in your music, and maybe how, if it's expressing something in your own journey. Again, I'm asking you to intellectualize something that maybe shouldn't be intellectualized, but here we are.
I'm not writing a song right now, so it's okay. I think those couple songs that you mentioned are kind of outliers for me. Nobody's Man and The Door Is Always Open, these kind of like rugged individualist songs. And I think that had to do with a specific time in my life. Obviously the pitfalls are many if you have an unhappy home life when you're a kid. But there is a pitfall if you have a very happy home life, and that is you never cleave away, you know what I mean? And you can kind of, if you don't cleave away to your own path, it doesn't always happen, but it could just, you could wake up at 35 years old, playing GTA in mom and dad's basement, with 100 milligram edibles, large fishbowl next to you. So that was really necessary for me, was like breaking away at that point, like becoming my own thing. I live in Chicago now. This is the woman that I'm gonna marry. I'm having a family now, and I love you, and I listen to you, but it's my responsibility now. I'm not the kid anymore. So it was almost like a complex I had in my 20s. Now that I'm older and I have, to a certain degree, navigated those things, I'm much more along the lines of kind of acceptance and grace and leaning into family, leaning into humility. I need my family. I need my folks. 2 of my kids are spending the night with my folks right now, tonight, I need them. I'm not embarrassed of it, but it was because I was able to break. It was because I was able to break away at that time. So I don't really play those songs anymore because I don't identify with them anymore. I haven't been that person in 15 years, and that's probably a good thing. There's nothing worse than trying to still be the 41-year-old rebel. Like, no one can tell me what to do. It's like, yeah, man, we know. Please stop talking.
Excellent. Well, I thought we might, I think Brianna's going to get a microphone, and if people have questions. I didn't realize how blinding the light was here, so I can't see anyone, but I think we have a microphone. If people have any thoughts or reflections.
I can probably hear you if you just say it.
Oh, we got it.
Oh, you got the
Rome is coming. Oh, this was the trick. I have to put my hand over my glasses.
Hi, thanks for coming and playing music with us. You mentioned so many musicians that I love as well, John Prine, Steve Earle. I want you to say something about the music that you love and what it means to you.
Yeah, I had a pretty meat and potato diet of singer-songwriters growing up. Obviously, I was talking about grunge music is what got me into music popularly, but then when I was in high school, my dad gave me the first John Prine record. I really fell in love with it big time. And then my girlfriend at the time, now wife, gave me the first Tom Waits album, which is called Closing Time, which is a lot more straightforward kind of singer-songwriter than his later stuff would become. And then as I would get older, Lucinda Williams was a huge one. Gillian Welch is another huge one. And then, so that's all the stuff I listened up to age 32. And then I had kids, and I have not consumed any media of any kind since I had kids. Right? So I'm hoping once they get older, I can start to rediscover stuff again. But I'm still able to feast on the stuff I had before because it was so rich. Yeah, right here. Right here.
Hello, I'm not a singer or musician, but I've written a couple songs on the side. I was wondering, do you have any advice for people who might be wanting to get their work out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of tools available now to do that. You probably want to pick up an instrument because they're not too hard. You know, learning basic stuff on piano or just a MIDI keyboard would be good for you. I would pick up a MIDI keyboard, get into a digital audio workstation, which comes, you know, if you have a MacBook, MacBooks have on them fully loaded more like audio equipment than the Beatles used in like their entire recording history. So I would just start messing around with writing and specifically recording music if you don't play an instrument yet, because you can get it down recorded. You can take as many passes as you want, and there's opportunities to do that. The other way to do that would be to collaborate. I've never really co-written myself, but I have a lot of friends who through different online exchanges, they find people who are not lyricists. Actually, what you'll find more often is people will write music and they're like, I don't want to do lyrics. So you might be in high demand in that case.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, how do you write your songs? Do you start with the music and then add lyrics, or do you do lyrics first and music, or does it happen at the same time?
It's changed over time. I used to just be lyrics only, but then I would run into this problem where I would spend hours and hours working on lyrics, and then the moment I'd go back to put it with the guitar, I just realized like immediately that it was a complete turd. You know what I mean? And it's like I'd been polishing this turd. So I went back to start writing with the guitar. But then again, so that was better. That was definitely better to have both together. But then with music, there is this other thing. Recorded music is an entirely different medium than what just happened here tonight. And I would run into this problem where I would write the song and it would feel good in the room, but then when it came to making the actual recording, which is what the vast majority of people are going to interact with when they hear the music, there was nothing popping off the tape when I would record it. And so my final step was I built a little studio. Actually built a studio in my parents' basement. They lived up, so maybe I am basically doing GTA now. I don't know. It was my own version of it. And I do the entire process at once because the feedback loop just becomes so much tighter at that point. I can have the lyric, I can have the song, and now I'm listening back. And I can know in 45 minutes whether it's something that's inspired. I want to listen back to something and I want to feel an emotion. I want to be taken somewhere. And I can know in 45 minutes rather than writing a bunch of songs, 3 months later going to a studio, paying the studio $1,000 a day to go in there and work, and then sit down in the live room, have the $6,000 microphone put in front of you, strum the first 4 chords, listen back, and again, I was polishing a turd. So I've slowly but surely closed the gap. It's like a feedback gap, and that's how it works. You do lose some stuff in that. I think my lyrics aren't as detailed as they used to be, but that's all right because the song is a sum of its parts. I had a lot of songs in my 20s where I think the lyrics were really good, but then the recordings were really flat. So what do? You're looking for the best sum of all those things that you can find.
What prompted you to start writing your own songs rather than just singing what other people made?
I guess I wanted to be famous, and I knew that was the best. But Yeah, I think it was the culture of these open mics that I was going to. I think there's still open mics now, but there was a really robust culture 20 years ago in Chicago. We'd go to these bars and no one was suffering you playing, you know, a Blink-182 cover or something like that. Like no one wanted to hear a cover. You came here to write. So it was probably the culture that I came up in, which is funny now. I talk to younger musicians and they're like, dude, we can't get booked to play a place if it's original music. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem. I want to play original music and the bar owner doesn't want it, or the patrons are, you know, calling out for Brown Eyed Girl. All my references are like at least a quarter century old here. And so, but that was the culture that I came up in. It was like you write your own stuff. And at that time it was you write it alone. There's a whole different culture. I have a lot of friends that write in Nashville for larger country acts, but a lot of pop and rock acts have their stuff written there now. And that is a culture of 4 people get in a room and they write a song in 3 hours. And they go to lunch and they come back and they write another song in 3 hours. And those guys and girls are so fast and so good. But that's the culture that they came up in, is working like that. But I came up, you know, there's a really good songwriter from Texas named Ray Wiley Hubbard. And his quote about songwriting, I think, is the closest to the culture that I came up in. And he goes, writing a song is like a cat giving birth. You just go under the porch by yourself and do it. And that's the culture I grew up in, songwriting was. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm a pretty big fan, and I've listened to some of your episodes of the Working Songwriter podcast, and some of my favorite artists have been on there. So I just wondered, like, how those conversations have impacted your perspective on music or songwriting, or if any of them have influenced you to write a song right after, or just changed how you thought about past songs.
Yeah, so she's referencing about 10 years ago, I started a podcast called The Working Songwriter, where I interview other songwriters. And I did that because I got tired of submitting records to magazines and other people's podcasts and them telling me no. And I was like, well, then I'll have a podcast and I'll tell people no. That's fine with me. And so I started that. And how has that affected me? Not too much on like the artistic end, but it really has affected me on the end of like, no matter how big an artist is, they're going through pretty similar struggles. How do I stay inspired? How do I not kind of sell out in a certain way? Am I a phony? All this type of stuff. Hearing people who've had vastly more success than me struggle with those things has been very, it's been salutary for me in my own pursuit. It's like, well, if so-and-so, you know, if Lucinda Williams feels that way about an album she wrote, which I think is a masterpiece, then maybe it's okay that I feel this way about something that I wrote.
So I'm sure on the road it's hard to, I guess, stay stable with your faith. And so I'm just wondering, are there any special ways that you stay consistent and stay rooted in Christ?
Yeah, there's an app called Mass Finder, and it's very, very bare bones. It's like you can tell it doesn't cost any money. You just get the feeling that like some Catholic coder was like, this wouldn't be too hard to build, and he or she built it. And so I usually try to go on Sundays when I'm on the road, or if it's a later show on a Saturday, I'll hit a vigil. But it's cool because it's a Catholic church, which means it's everywhere. And I remember, I don't go down there anymore now that I have kids because the trip is so far, but at the very start of my conversion, I was in Australia and I was playing basically in like not the outback of Australia. I'm sure they'd be insulted. They'd be like, this is a suburb. Just because we're in Australia doesn't mean we're in the outback. But it was pretty far out there. And I was playing their version of an American Legion. And I was just converting, and I woke up in the morning and I was like, well, I wonder if there's a Catholic mass. This is a town of 500 people in the middle of nowhere in Western Australia. And sure enough, there was. And it started in 15 minutes. And I walked into this little country church. They were all kind of weirded out because I'm sure it's the same people that go all the time. And then the liturgy started. And the liturgy was the same liturgy as the one that we said back in Maryland. And I was missing my kids. I was almost as much missing my wife. And to be there and to like, that's pretty cool. And since then, you know, I get to go all over the place. There's been to the Basilica in St. Louis, been to St. Paul's Cathedral in St. Paul. I've been to a Catholic church in Joshua Tree, California. It's a really neat part of the faith in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. In a sense, it continues from the previous question. I was thinking as you were talking about this work by French author of the late 18th century, early 19th century, called The Genius of Christianity, by Chateaubriand. And it's a defense of Christianity, not from the perspective of dogma and doctrine, but from an aesthetic perspective. He focuses very much on what he sees as the connections between Christianity and art, Christianity and beauty, and particularly Catholicism for him. So I wanted to ask you once again, what role is your conversion playing in your art? For example, one of the things that I remember from the book that he says, I think it's a pretty neat quote, he says something along the lines of, music is the child of prayer.
Music is the chime of prayer?
Music is the child of prayer.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, as you were talking, if you could reflect a bit more on that. What role is your conversion playing in your music?
Well, so it's kind of tricky territory here because a lot of specifically Christian music in America is not my style. Like I think it. So Catholicism. But a lot of that music is more Protestant, and no shade, it's just not my style. Catholicism, though, I think I was drawn, one of the reasons I was drawn to it is because the emphasis on beauty. I've heard Bishop Barron talk about, I think it's, forgive me for the pronunciation, but I think it's called via pulchritudinis, like the way of beauty is how you find your way to Christ. So I'm not trying anything new. I was always trying to make really beautiful stuff, as beautiful as I could, and that to me, I don't feel like I need to sit down and now very ham-fistedly write a song that's like praise him, or like I don't think I need to do that. I think I need to have him in my mind, on my lips, and in my heart, but to just focus on beauty, because obviously that's Christ given itself. And but I am keenly aware of, like, I don't want it to be too on the nose. Things that are too on the nose are not beautiful. And so I'm pretty much, it's a pretty similar process, except now I know where the beauty comes from, basically.
It's been said that the poet is a canary in the coal mine for a culture, that what a culture feels is what the poet can express. Do you think that saying is characteristic of your work, or no?
I don't know. I mean, that's not for me to say. I mean, I am trying to express, I think I'm a relatively sensitive person, so maybe that would help, but I don't know. I don't think I've prefigured anything or anything like that.
So one of my favorite lyrics that you sang tonight was, history's perfect because it's written by winners. And I was just wondering, if you could rewrite a part of your personal history, what would it be?
I would have had kids sooner. Yeah. My wife and I had been, we were together in high school. We got back together when we were 24, and we waited about 8 years to have kids. And I would have had kids sooner. I really would have. We have 3 kids. We'll see if we have any more or not, but we're getting a little long in the tooth. And, but yeah, I genuinely have no regret. I mean, there's some professional regrets, but entertainment and music, it's such a crapshoot. It's such a crapshoot as to what If you want to become huge, it's funny, I see people go into the music business all the time. They've come from like other businesses and they have a lot of capital and they're like, I know how to crack the code on this. Come up with a marketing plan, get someone looking good, we put all the money, we put the money at God behind this and we get it going, and it fails every time because audiences decide with music. Audience will not be force-fed anything. Anything. Who's the biggest artist in the world today? Arguably Zach Bryan. It started on TikTok. He's playing to a camera, just him himself, backwards hat, and doing. Audiences decide. So I don't have any professional regrets because audiences decide. You either hit the zeitgeist or you don't. You can miss the zeitgeist by half a second. There's nothing you can do about that. But as far as, you know, my history, my personal history, I think my wife and I totally could have had kids at 24. I think I was never going to grow up until I had kids. So I might as well have grown up at 24 than at 32.
As someone whose sort of work involves traveling a lot, I was sort of wondering, sort of over your career, how you've sort of learned to sort of balance your professional life with your family life.
That's been a struggle. Before I had kids, I used to travel. I'd do 200 shows a year, and that was good. It helped me. Well, it helped me get good at putting on shows. You have to do things over and over and over again. And then, as soon as my wife was pregnant with our first kid, I just knew it was over. I called that manager at the time that I had and let him know, and that agent. And I didn't end up parting ways with them immediately at that point. But the way I now wanted to work was so different that it led to the dissolution of both of those professional relationships, which was very scary for me because I had a kid at home. I just wanted to work less. I told him I wanted to work like a stand-up comedian. I didn't want to be gone for 8 weeks. I wanted to fly into a place, play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and go home. That's what I wanted to do, but they don't do that in music, really. And I said, well, either I'm going to do that or I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, I was really at peace. Maybe this is against what I was saying earlier about having kids a little bit later. By 32, if I had to stop playing music at that point, I was at peace. I had given it the old college try at that point, and I wasn't going to be away from my kids 200 dates a year. So it was like, either I'm going to be able to do 50 dates a year and support our household and pay the mortgage and all that, or I'm going to go do something else. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable with that. And I parted ways with the whole business apparatus I had, and I ended up finding a new company that wanted to work with me in that way, and I've been able to muddle through. You know, it's kind of hard. I don't get to travel with a band anymore because it's too expensive. It's fun traveling with a band. It sounds awesome when you're a band of good musicians. I mean, if I was up here tonight and I had a drummer with brushes and a guy with a B3 organ and someone playing pedal steel, like, it would have been a better show. I'm not going to lie to you, but you know, that's not how life is arrayed. It's my professional life has arrayed itself for me. But it's very important to me, and you know, it's just my priority is like the moment that this affects the kids. I've owned a business for 20 years. I'm sure I could make myself effective in someone else's business and punch a paycheck and stay around. But it's worked out so far. We'll see how it goes.
So I'm conscious of we're coming up to the end of our time. And so I want to again thank Joe for speaking with us and coming and performing his music.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I also want to thank the fine and performing arts staff who've helped us with the sound, and I want to thank also the staff of the Hamilton School who have helped to organize this event with me. Cheryl and Brianna and Roman's been going around with the mic, and others as well. So I'm really grateful to everyone who's helped make this event possible, and I'm especially grateful to all of you who've come out to this event and contributed your excellent questions and for this conversation. I think Joe will be around for a little bit. I should say, of course, Joe he flew down here, so he didn't have a huge bag to bring down merch, but you can go to joepugmusic.com and support Joe and his music, and buy some merch, and you know, I think that would be great. So thank you all so much, really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk more soon. All right, take care.
Thank you.